Harvard University now the epicenter of a national debate over affirmative action, the university being accused of racial bias for limiting the admission of Asian American students to leave room for students from other groups. Now, a federal lawsuit could make it all the way to the Supreme Court and change the fate of the controversial policy for years to come, potentially. Trace Gallagher from our West Coast newsroom with the backstory on this one. Hi, Trace.
Hi, Martha. It's taken 4 years to get this case to trial, but today the courtroom was packed and opening statements were direct and to the point. The attorney for those who filed the lawsuit said that after studying 6 years of Harvard admission records, it was clear that Harvard rates Asian American applicants higher than white applicants in all factors except for personal qualities such as courage, kindness, and leadership, indicating that is discrimination. The lawyer for the plaintiff went on to ask how it's possible that Asians rate higher than whites in most categories, and yet there is only one Asian student on campus for every 2 whites. But the attorney for Harvard countered, saying the university cannot achieve its educational goals without considering race, but that Harvard never considers an applicant's race as a negative. Harvard has argued that only 6% of the U.S. population is Asian American, but 23% of those accepted into Harvard are Asian American. Listen to Harvard students on both sides. Watch.
Race cannot be removed effectively from an application just because it is so central to so many people's identity.
Whether or not you're for or against affirmative action, it's still important to see how affirmative action has negatively impacted Asian American groups, and you can be for affirmative action and still be critical of Harvard in this sense.
Now, certainly white applicants have many times challenged affirmative action in college admissions. This case is unique because a minority group is at the center of the fight. And we should note the Trump administration joined this lawsuit back in August. Experts say the trial should last about 3 weeks, and the verdict will likely be appealed to the First Circuit Court, and there it could possibly go to the Supreme Court. Remember, Justice Brett Kavanaugh replaces Justice Anthony Kennedy. It was Kennedy who wrote the majority opinion upholding the University of Texas affirmative action program back in 2016. Much different court just 2 years later.
Yeah, that was
Martha.
a white student who said that she was discriminated against at the University of Texas, and she won that.
Right.
Interesting to note Judge Kavanaugh's involvement in that. Trace, thank you so much. So I'm joined now on set by Judge Andrew Napolitano, Fox News senior judicial analyst, and Susan Lee, Fox Business Network correspondent covering this case. Good to have both of you here. Susan, what do you think about Harvard's case?
I think it was offensive hearing some of the comments from Trace Gallagher's report. But look, you know, it's no surprise that Asian parents do drive their children to academic excellence as part of the Confucian principles. That is the foundation of Asian culture. And that means in order to earn respect from your parents, from your family, and even to earn a respectable place in society, you have to excel when it comes to school. And so in this case, I would say that on balance, most people I've spoken to in the Asian community think that there is discrimination.
Judge, what do you make of this case?
It's a case the Supreme Court doesn't want. Both of the University of Texas cases, though the plaintiff did win them, she never ended up at the University of Texas, and the guidelines that were sent down were a little ambiguous. So maybe the universities in the country do need some firm guidelines. It'll be a couple of years before it gets there.
I mean, it's fascinating when you think about this, because affirmative action was supposed to create some more diversity on college campuses, right? So now it's like, oh, well, all of these Asian students are doing so well that they're taking up too much space. So back off while we make room for some of these other groups.
The math demonstrates that if you take a seat away from a qualified person because of their race in order to give it to somebody else, there's a winner and there's a loser. And if the loser is actually more academically qualified than the winner, how are they going to justify that? Well, the courts have said race may be taken into account as long as it is one of many factors. It can't be the dispositive factor, and it can't be the factor they weigh the heaviest, but they may take it into account.
All right. Now, what about the question of it being a private institution? And why do they have to answer to who they let in and who they don't? Because we know they take a lot of legacy students. They take athletes.
Correct.
They take, I mean, you know, the mix is more about that perhaps than
some of the internal research shows that if you are, say, a faculty member, if you're an offspring of a faculty member, you have 50%.
50%.
Wow.
And the admissions rate is what, like 9 or something?
Right. If you're a recruited athlete, it's over 80%. And even if you're a child of an alumni, it's over 33%, which is probably better than what you're doing as an Asian American student at just close to 25% acceptance.
So to answer your question, the Supreme Court cases that we're talking about are the University of Texas, which is owned by the state.
Right.
And the state government cannot apply race.
So this is different.
This is a private university, but in 2017 alone, received over $600 million in federal dollars. They have $30 billion.
They don't need any money from the federal government.
In cash in the bank, and they got $600 million from the feds. When they accepted that $600 million, they agreed they would not discriminate on the basis of race as one of many conditions.
So if they turn down the money in the future, they will have less of an argument. They can probably do what they want.
Correct. Can you see them turning down that kind of money?
Well, they have so much money, Judge.
They don't need anymore.
They don't need
billion
federal dollars probably at Harvard. Do you think that race should be completely removed from the equation so that nobody checks any boxes and they only look at your numbers and your qualifications?
I would agree. I would think from the Asian American cultural perspective, it should be a meritocracy, meaning it should be based on your academic scores, your extracurricular activities, and nothing ambiguous like my personality, which is so subjective. I mean, courage, bravery, saying that Asian American students lack that, it's insulting.
It is insulting to ascribe to everyone the attributes of one or two just because they're in the same group. Absolutely insulting. But it's a private university, and they're allowed to insult. They're not the government.
Fascinating. I'm going to be watching this. Thank you so much. Great to see both of you tonight.
Thank you.
So remember...